So I'm going to be talking about Shadow. So I'm going to be talking about the facts on why Shadow can't use his full power, can't stay with his full power. Um, and there is one reason to that. So everything is like this, like a gold ring. Um, so Shadow wears inhibitors, which limits his power. Um, but not many have actually thought of why Shadow wasn't trained to accept his power, and work with his power. So, thing is, Shadow's not strong enough, to work with his power yet, because he doesn't tend to do it. He just keeps his inhibitors on. So, I'll explain this. Now, during Gerald's creation, during creating Shadow, Gerald actually knew how strong Shadow was from the get go. So even with the training, so he decided to put inhibitor rings on his wrists instead of training that power, within him, because that was his true power. Um, so so apparently Shadow should have been trained um, trained for a long period without the inhibitor rings on, because when you apparently see Shadow fighting without the inhibitor rings on, he's extremely powerful. Um, really powerful. Now, let's say let's basically say with examples of who he fights against with the rings on and the rings off. Okay, so let's scale this to Sonic and Shadow, in a fight. Now, we all know the fight between Sonic and Shadow. While Shadow has in his inhibitor rings off, um, well, apparently it's limited. So, since Shadow's power is limited, in that fight, it's not fair on Shadow because Shadow's not using his full power. So that would mean that would give Sonic the edge to win, in that fight. But if Shadow takes his rings off, his inhibitor rings, Shadow has a chance because that's his full power right there. That's his true strength. Because that's like saying, okay, I'm taking the gloves off and I'm actually fighting with my real power. That actually would be his real power. Because Shadow has actually beaten Sonic before, a couple of times. So Shadow is strong, really strong. He actually also has beaten Knuckles. Yeah, Knuckles the Echidna. Um, he has fought with Knuckles a couple of times, even in the comics. Um, so Knuckles actually is really strong too. So if Shadow gets really strong, Knuckles would have the strength to repel against that usually because, like in Sonic X, Shadow actually took the inhibitor rings off. Yeah, he wasn't messing around. Knuckles didn't give up. No matter how many times he got smacked around, Knuckles always shown up to fight Shadow. Shadow just got sick and just plummeted him down. So that just shows right there that Shadow is not messing around. When he has an objective, he would just easily batter someone in the ground, even if they're trying to show their strength against him. Shadow would basically know what his true goal is, and even if he has to, he would just take his inhibitor rings off and show his true power, to them, which would scare them and it would do a lot of damage. Also, there is more power to Shadow. Also, now the darkest power of Shadow is his chaos state, which everyone refers to him as Chaos Shadow because that's when his rage comes out. So it also is actually a bit sort of different to Dark. It's actually a lot different. Because with Chaos State, Shadow actually does have some control over that Chaos State. That means it's just power inside his body, and ready to explode. And he just unleashes it. That's it. So that is one part of his power. Um, you can just let it off just like that without any need of a Chaos Emerald. Um, so if anyone that's around that, bam. Basically they're pretty much injured. Now, Sonic has been injured by his blasts. Um, from what we've seen in Shadow the Hedgehog, he would be standing around, and then Shadow would unleash that Chaos Blast when he gets mad, meaning that would mean he took off his inhibitor rings, and Sonic would have got hurt. Yeah. So that would have hurt any enemy around Shadow. It's kind of like taking off a dynamite bomb in the middle of an area, and then it just explodes within a lot of radius or whatever. So the only person it wouldn't harm is the user, meaning Shadow. Yeah, so basically that's basically Shadow's power. Because Shadow's power comes from the Black Arms. Also, it comes from Chaos itself. Because his power just comes from that too. Because it's connected. Um, so yeah, so the best. So apparently now I'm gonna referring to the comics. So in the comics, Shadow just gets stronger, but in base or whatever, he does actually take an inhibitor ring off. Sometime in the 30 years later comic, he does take an inhibitor ring off, and he does slay one of his followers, Leander. By the way, he does murder her, just kills her just like that with a chaos spear in his hand, and that's it. She's gone. Also, Shadow has the power to give energy to users, like chaos in a way, energy to give to chaos and whatever to make it extremely more powerful. Shadow got stronger in that comic. And whatever. So in the comic, the only ones that were able to rebel against Shadow were the Echidnas. The Echidnas have the power to actually prevent any problems with Shadow. That means they'll be able to freeze him in some sort of chaotic energy, which is connected to Shadow. So that means they would freeze him. That means that would put him in some sort of sleep for years or something like that. So apparently that's a connection right there because of how strong Shadow is. Even the government is scared of him. Because you do not want to get on Shadow's bad side. Now, the reason is you don't want to get on Shadow's bad side is because once he apparently gets mad enough, that's it. You're screwed. Yeah, so that would be it, really. Shadow can be easily hot-tempered, which could have been the reason that Gerald put the rings on him in the first place. Probably because he was terrified of training his abilities to, even though Shadow's supposed to be mastered in, his chaos control, his full-on power, though, like his extra energy, though, I don't think he has control over that yet. I think he's still learning to control that because even in super form, he can't last that long in super form. He has to because when he knows he uses too much energy, that's it. Especially with the Matter X in Sonic X, he actually did start shooting around and whatever in a spin dash or whatever, and he was easily exhausted after that. That's how tired out Shadow can get at that rate, because he uses all that energy that he has that's stored, but when he doesn't have his power exhibitor rings, he can get worn out and collapse or whatever from exhaustion. Um, so like basically like unlike the other characters, they're used to their powers. They can use it, especially Knuckles. Knuckles actually has really good chaotic energy and powers. Um, so so thing is, who do I think can actually help Shadow control his powers? The obvious answer would have to be Knuckles. The reason I say Knuckles is because um, he was trained as a child to work with the Master Emerald. So he's been trained most of his life. He can restore the Master Emerald back to its original state, even if it's broken. He can actually restore that. Um, that's the reason I think also Knuckles could actually because Knuckles' family are very powerful when you think about it, because they have the power to actually deal with like Shadow's type of energy. Because again, it comes from chaos in a way. Um, so yeah, so the power levels of Shadow are very powerful. There is some enemies though out there that would actually be able to beat Shadow. If a Shadow had trained um his um his powers without the inhibitor rings on, if he had trained his body to go on longer without fainting, you know what I mean, able to use it at will whenever he felt like it, and then he wouldn't collapse. It'd be his body would be stronger against then he basically would be used to using so much power at once. Um, that would make him stronger and such. Yeah, so that is basically on apparently what I think or whatever. So so apparently let's basically go this again. So So, for example, you got like a ring, you basically put it like that. That's the inhibit ring, just like that. Now, imagine this: you have it on, your powers are limited, whatever. You can't really do much. You feel trapped. Okay, so take it off. Okay, that's like your wrist right there. So take that off, and that would be it. Your power is more stronger than ever. So Shadow would basically have his full strength, literally. That would mean he would be able to. That would mean to be able to hit a couple of enemies at once, and such. And yeah, he would be so powerful. He probably would have kicked Scooge's ass in the comics, if he had took them off. Um, yeah. So that just goes to show how strong Shadow actually is in general, because he has actually kicked a couple of enemies without the inhibitor rings on. Yeah, so yeah, so that is the facts and whatever of Shadow the Hedgehog. On what I think is the logical answer on why Shadow was the inhibitor rings and why his scientist was. I actually do think it was probably the government telling his scientist to do it. Maybe told him not to take them off. um. So yeah. So apparently, I think that's what I think right now of Shadow. Of the facts and explanations and whatever. Um. So if you want to make your own facts about Shadow, on a similar theory or something like that, go right ahead. So yeah, yeah.